Production.
Hey yo, what is poppin'? So we're gonna go over PLTR here, right? Palantir Technologies. We're looking at the weekly time frame right now. We've had some really good volume coming into the stock. Okay, so from the IPO, started at around $9. We got a big push. This is right at the end of like the 2020 bull market. So they were printing insane amounts of money, a lot of monetary easing. Pretty much everything was going up, right? This stock got an immediate reaction right after the IPO, and we went up around 360% plus, right? Call it 400%, whatever. So we top out, right? And now we have this long period of consolidation. Look at the volume coming in here, right? So as you could see at the beginning of near the IPO stage, big volume coming in, right? And that ramps the stock up. Then we get large excess amounts of volume leaving the stock, okay? So money coming in, stock goes up. You see big money leaving, right? Large, pretty much the highest volume ever is exit volume. And of course, that kind of gives us the top, right? So you could mark that off. You could mark this week, this area, this price point as essentially the top of the stock, right? This is where most, call it insider investors, whales, whatever you want to say, this is where they were exiting, okay? So now 2 years go by. This is February 2021. 2 years go by. It's now June 2023. And if you look at the past 5 weeks, massive volume coming in the stock, all right? Close to highest ever, not the exact highest ever, but very close. Now 5 consecutive weeks of very large volume coming in. What does that mean? In my opinion, what this means is that there are a significant amount of buyers in terms of big money. I'm talking about whales, institutional investors, maybe private companies, whatever. They're buying the stock up, okay? Why is that happening? Who knows? Obviously, there's something bullish around tech or maybe Palantir Technologies in general, but the big volume coming in is telling us that people are trying to basically get ahead of the herd, whether that's, again, whales, institutional investors, etc. Big money's coming into the stock, okay? So this is just, I'm trying to kind of paint a picture of how to read this chart, just simply looking at the volume, right? Now, when you add the technical analysis in it, we've had a 2-year downtrend. We've had this falling wedge pattern, you could call it that, or a triangle. There's some sort of pattern developing here where essentially it's accumulating in a downward fashion at the bottom of a range. This is giving us some sort of indication that there's accumulation happening in this area from around, right, $14 from January 2022 up until May 2023, where we form this pattern. It's showing us that there's been some sort of accumulation in this lower range, right, at the bottom of a bear market. So then we have this big pop, the volume coming in. It's kind of telling us, okay, this will eventually, again, this is just my opinion. So when I say this will, it's not a guarantee. Anything could happen. But from what I'm reading off of this is due to go higher in time. We just need to be patient now. So what we need to look at, and I seen someone mention in my comments of the last PLTR video saying, oh, I sold at like $9 and then I rebought in at 16 and now it's immediately going down. This is why we need to pay attention to the psychology and technical analysis. We could pair them together to prevent us from buying around local tops, right? So here's the thing. We have this pattern. We get the breakout with large volume coming in on the weekly time frame, right? This is when we need to look at like the previous levels in the chart in the past, right? This $17, $18 range was our support for a long period of time, right? And you could look here because we came back and revisited and got a massive bounce. And before we flushed under, there was a period of time for a few weeks where we settled at this 18, 17, $80, $17.80 range, right? We couldn't break below it until we did. So when we come back up into these levels, you have to assume that previous support is now going to act as a resistance, at least for a certain period of time. So now what can we expect, right? Another few things just to paint a picture, right? You could use the EMAs to kind of give yourself a better idea of, should I be waiting to buy or should I buy now? Okay. So ideally you want to buy around supports if you're going for a trade. And ideally you could look at the 8 EMA, right? And things will tend to, like if you look at this 8 EMA, we go above it, but we always come back to it. Go above it, come back to it. Go below it, back to it. The EMA price will always want to go back to this 8 EMA, right? Now you could do the same thing with the 21 as well, right? 8 EMA is just a closer time frame, right? So the way we need to look at this is when you see price go a little bit too far extended above the 8 EMA, you need to think, okay, are we close to resistance, right? Big money has come in. It's been a few weeks, 5 straight weeks of up. Now we're getting a little bit too extended from the 8. So now you need to start thinking, is price going to eventually come back and consolidate around that 8 EMA, right? These are just things you could ask yourself to basically prevent from buying at that local top. Sorry if this video is getting long, but what I'm thinking is going to happen is there's going to be a period of time where we consolidate, whether it's sideways or we come back towards this $12 range to retest previous resistance to make it support, or we come back to that 8 EMA. What we need to look at and pay attention to is how we can consolidate, right? So for example, we might just go sideways, which is very bullish, right? Or we might go downward towards this zone and recalibrate before we continue upward. But essentially what we're looking at, this will eventually keep going. So the next few prices, 21, 26, and eventually 37 in the future, there's going to be resistance along the way. So don't be buying at those resistance points is essentially what I'm trying to get at. So another thing I wanted to point out, right? We're starting to now get, if we just draw this line here, let's say, could be looking at it from this point where maybe we need to consolidate a bit before we break out of this major downtrend line. That could be it as well. Again, another thing we could look at, sorry for making this video too long. Let's check out the 200 and go back to the daily and turn that on. Right, when we look at this 200, we're now above it on the daily time frame. Okay, sorry. Let's zoom out 2-day. Right, we're above the 200. 3-day, just below. Okay, so 3 days probably the most we'll get. Right, yeah, it hasn't been, but the 2-day, 3-day. Now that we're above this 200. We need to see, will we come back, retest, settle above it for a while and create the next pattern before we get this breakout. Okay, so these are the things we're looking at PLTR. There's a few bullish catalysts we need to pay attention to and technical, features that we need to watch, right? We can't just go buy all in because we've seen the 5-week pump. You can if you're a very long-term investor, then it really doesn't matter when you buy as long as you're accumulating. But if you're looking for that trade, we need to time this and be a little bit more particular and a little bit more accurate. So that's the breakdown on PLTR. Peace, guys.